Still not tired of that. Oh my goodness. Good morning, everybody. It's the pollinator, and as you can see, I'm still dressed up the same way I was last night during a live where three of us were talking about do do all trans lives really matter? And while this is still fresh in my head, I wanted to do a follow-up to that live and maybe answer a couple of questions that were just thrown out there, I think, around what I said. I cannot speak for the other two men that were in that live, but I can speak about this stuff in terms of myself and try to use I statements as far as that's concerned. I think I do need to put more structure in the lives because if not, it'll splinter off into a lot of different directions that it's not like I'm trying to control everything, but definitely there's certain topics that I did want to steer clear of, but I just wasn't thinking at the time about that. So the title of this vlog is going to be called Under the Bus. And I want to speak on that specifically. Oh, before I get into that topic, listen. Yeah, I intended that thing to be more generalized, because generalized in the area of whether black trans men's lives matter or not. Not necessarily, not the transition stuff, because look, there's a million different aspects of the transgender world, and you can almost get completely lost in trying to talk about various people's journey, where they're at in their journey, and whatnot. I mean, people reach out to me from all over the world on different platforms. Some of them wanting to transition, some of them having partners who want to transition but don't, for various reasons. And I was thinking about this word that one of the guys in the live said, which was gatekeepers of who is and is not transgender. Or who is or is not transgender. And because I'm privy to people's personal stories about this, even though he's privy to a lot of young people's stories about being transgender, I'm privy to people various ages, various nationalities, various quote-unquote races. And so I see it from a different perspective, where I've been asked to be their gatekeeper on whether they feel comfortable enough to transition or not. Now, the boundary that I keep up around that is not to try anyway, not to invalidate their experience of being pre-transition or not, because a lot of these people are just beginning to explore. They're trying to embrace this the same way I did. For 3 years, I didn't talk to people, but I researched what it was to be transgender, and I had not crossed over to a point where I could embrace what I really was. I was terrified of it. I did not, in thinking back, I'm not sure what exactly I was afraid of, but I was afraid. And one of the big things that stuck out in my head was that I was quite comfortable in my little lesbian box, even though that's not what I was. Mentally and emotionally, I hadn't crossed over into who I really am. And it took a long time. Well, comparatively speaking, for me, it took a long time to embrace and stop fighting that I was a trans man. And I had that same fight when I realized that I was attracted to women. It was almost the exact same fight, where I didn't want to embrace that neither, because of society, basically. And what I found out when I transitioned from female to male, and I'm not finished in my transition, by the way. I'm not even sure. Well, some say you're finished when you've had all of the surgeries. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, that you cross over from being in transition to being transsexual. You're no longer transgender, and there's just a lot of stuff around being transgender, which is why I still say that people are more comfortable with their thoughts and their emotions all about being transgender when a larger issue is going on in the nation around being black, and then transgender under that. That is not, because of fear, people don't want to touch that shit with a 10-foot pole. And my therapist asked me if I felt alone or lonely in that my agenda is being pro-black. Not who I'm a pro-black man who happens to be transgender. She asked me if I've met anybody who has that kind of mentality, and I can honestly say, behind the scenes, maybe one or two, but they're not openly like that. So yeah, I find myself, I don't feel lonely, but I am alone in that I'm willing to put myself out there as being pro-black, knowing that any point in time I could either disclose or it can be discovered that I am a trans man, and then the whole black world will shrink up like a violet. So yeah, I did want things to kind of, for us to talk about the experience of being a black transgender man, more so than getting into that transition stuff, which is just, oh my God, it's so vast and it's so misunderstood. And there are a lot of people out there using the blood, sweat, and tears of trans men who paved the way for them to get their hands on HRT, for them to get the acceptance from society to even go ahead and have access to HRT. And then you've got a bunch of them that, and I'm not even going to put a label on them, but that will get on this stuff just for the physicality that it gives them. But they look like men, but they don't want to be called men. Anyway, that's as far as I'm going to go with that. So, and I also wanted to highlight this. Look, things can always be worse. There is always going to be somebody who feels more invalidated than somebody else when it comes to being marginalized in this country. And yeah, so when I think about being under the bus, I think about it in terms of this. The rest of my life, I am building a bus. A bus that many, maybe perhaps all and any black person can get on that bus, so that we don't continue to focus on the negativity, the ignorance, the misunderstandings, the pecking order, the patriarchy, the gatekeepers, the hierarchy, all of that stuff that is going on in the black community, where some people are ignored, some people are not included on that bus. Now, yes, my bus is a small bus. Right now, it does not include every kind of black person on the planet. But not because I'm being discriminatory, because I am strategically building that bus. And I'm not going to talk about strategy or the mission statement or whatnot of Trans Male Black Lives Matter. But there's a strategy to all of this, to where at some point we will open the doors to any and every kind of black person there is. I just think that right now there's a lot of growing up to do. There's a lot of maturity that people need to have in order for me to want to take on managing all of the negativity and the attacks and things of that nature going on with certain kinds of transgender people. TMBLM is not about you being transgender. It happens to be run by transgender men, because we don't have that kind of bus in the United States. But it's not about being transgender. It's about being black. It's about being pro-black. It's about being Pan-African. It's about a lot of things that have nothing, absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with transition stuff. And then in the background of that primary conversation that a lot of people in all black communities are having trouble being afraid of and not wanting to take on. In the background of all of that, yes, I will be helping trans men find their nerve. I will be helping them become leaders. Right now it is I will be helping them lift their self-esteem, helping them step into something that, even as cisgender men, cisgender just means you identify with the gender that was on your birth certificate. That's all it means. That's it. There's no negative connotation on the word cisgender. That's all it means. And transgender is just the opposite. That's all it means. So, well, and then you got these agenders that one of the men brought up. But again, you know what? The society and the communities around the country, if not the world, are so freaking splintered and getting more and more splintered, where it's making things extremely complicated. And because of my teachings in what I was taught in Alcoholics Anonymous, keep it simple. 5 words that the entire world has gotten away from, but that is deeply grounded in my personality. And this is something that I heard over and over and over again in 12-step programs, which is keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah, 5 words. See, the more complicated we make things, the more difficult it will be to tackle them. That's why I'm taking off I'm biting off a smaller piece to deal with at first as I build this organization. And then, like I said in the live, that this is just the tip of the iceberg. See, at the tip of the iceberg, the tip of icebergs are more narrow than the part that is grounded into the water. But the part that is grounded into the water is what? It's bigger, it's wider. It probably reaches down even deeper than what's above the water. So that is the intent of this organization, is to be able to include all black people, no matter what their sexuality or their gender is, or their gender identity is. But again, without a strategy, what would happen is what happened to my original group on the Facebook platform, where people were getting away from the intention of the group and wanting to argue and fuss and fight about their transition. When I made it very, very clear to everybody that, you know what, there's over 100, maybe 100, I don't know, groups on that platform to help you deal with your transition. TMBLM was not that group. It was not, and it's not that kind of organization where we're going to be tackling the very, very personal things that one has to tackle in order to embrace who and what they really are. No, that's not the focus of TMBLM, although for people who have embraced it, you know, we'll be able to, this organization will be able to help them somewhat feel a little bit more comfortable with who they are, only in terms of products. But I say we need to be comfortable being Moors, being black, being melanated, being all of those things in the black community. We need to be more comfortable with, along with transition. But to me, it's still a larger chunk that we need to bite off than to, at the same time that we're dealing with our transition. See, it's not different than anything else in life. You got to juggle multiple things throughout your life, your family life, your life with your friends, your jobs, etc., etc., etc. And everybody's got a priority of what they're going to sink most of their energy into, and prioritize everything else that's going on in their life. So, with TMBLM, the priority, number one, is that we are black people, we are Moors, we are African American, we are whatever. Are these adjectives or nouns? Anyway, whatever you want to call yourself in this world, we need to become grounded in that. We need to heal from the slave mentality, from anti-blackness. We need to heal from that while taking on everything else going on in our life. So I wanted to bring up also something that happened in the last live I hosted on that platform, which is something that a lady named Blossom said, which was that here's why I say trans men are under the bus, in that we're being completely left out of the conversations of what it is to be a trans man. And a lot of the media is going to trans women to ask about trans men's experience. They're not coming to us. They're going to them. And we're not sure why they're not coming to us and going to them, trying to get them to explain something they can't explain. Which reminds me of, guess what? Cittadini going after transgender people in the military. In the military, you have to be binary. You have to be either woman or man identity in the military in order for them to accept your transition. But look at what they did with the RAND study, which is what the idiot was looking at when he started going after us, which was that, they the cisgender community got together and decided what transgender people were or were not, how much money it was going to cost to make them combat ready, to spend money on surgeries, to spend money on HRT, all of these things that they decided in that stupid ass study that didn't make any freaking sense whatsoever to us. They did not come to us and ask us what it is that we would want, what it is that we do not want, who it is that we are. They didn't come to us and ask veterans or active duty what this is all about. They got together and decided through ignorance what we were about. So the same thing is going on in the, and I'm not going to speak for the white transgender community, I'm going to speak for the black transgender community, and that because the trans women are more visible and they have more access to resources and the media and books and documentaries and this and that, because they are more out front of the entire movement, they're going to them instead of coming to us, which would in turn uplift trans men. But they don't want that to happen, so they're going to people who don't know anything about our experience to ask them what our experience is. Really? And okay, I'm not going to cast a strange light on this except to say that there's almost a preference to keep that status quo, to keep them out front, to keep transgender women in the limelight, to keep transgender women on top of the whole doggone thing, and they don't really want us in there. I'm not sure why, because it sure would bring, it would sure unify the entire structure if it wasn't that way. But I hear I see the ... that while complicit about trans men, we don't want to open that door and uplift trans men to put them on our level either. Maybe they're afraid that the resources would dry up for them if we have more resources. I don't know. I'm just thinking about. I'm just thinking about out loud. But the disrespect is very apparent from all aspects of society towards trans men. That's why I say we're under the bus. Now, yes, under that bus is various levels under the bus. But again, I don't want to get into the victimization conversation where it almost looks like we don't stand a chance in hell of getting out from under that bus. Well, my bus is going to give people brief experiences of not being under that bus. See? Almost like a vacation from the everyday grind of being under people's bus. At least that is my intent. And that is how I'm going to groom my leaders for this organization. I am looking at some notes I took here. Another, one of the men last night brought up corporations, working for corporations in the United States. And I thought about it after, when I played it back and heard what he said, and I'm not even sure if I should be calling that individual he. I didn't hear them refer to themselves as he. But anyway, so one of the things is about corporations. I guess because he kind of lives, I'm going to say pronouns. Because they live, basically their world is inside of a corporate bubble box and they don't see all this other stuff going on outside of that box. outside of that box, young people are probably very, very afraid because they can't get into the corporate world. And at the same time, the pecking order and the hierarchy going on inside of corporations, even if you're doing very, very well, you're not going to ever do as good as white people are doing in the corporate world. And I experienced that myself. There is just, yeah, while I was making very, 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 very good money, compared to a lot of people in this country, I still wasn't making as much as somebody who was not black doing the same thing I was doing. And so on the flip side of that is also a new awareness of becoming entrepreneurs in this country. Because it's quite obvious that the corporate world has a lower ceiling for black people, people of color. Actually, there's a pecking order there. Black people are at the bottom, Hispanics are above that. I'm not sure where Native Americans are, but Asians are above that. And then you've got white people on top. And it doesn't matter whether you're cisgender or transgender. Your opportunities increase vastly when you are not black in the corporate world. So yeah, somebody told him that people are saying fuck corporations and whatnot, and that it bothered him. But I mean, it wouldn't bother me. In my old life, it wouldn't bother me. Today, it would bother me because I don't want to be working for the man, where they control my destiny. They control how high the ceiling is for me. I'm no longer comfortable with that level of oppression where they get to control who is and is not in the industry, how high you can go in whatever industry that you're in, and that kind of thing. So I see from an older person, from an elder perspective, the corporate world. And then I see from the young people's experience, and I don't want to speak for all of them, I'm just speculating, that they're not being prepared skill-wise to enter into the corporate world. So I can see where they'd be pissed off at the corporate world for not letting them in. Hell, I experienced that after I exited the military. I could not, it took me forever to find a job in the corporate world after I got out of the military. And I kept thinking, and I would say out loud to my lover and my friends and my family, how am I going to get in that world if they won't let me in that world? How am I going to get the experience if they won't let me in to get the experience? I remember distinctly thinking that and being a little depressed that I was not being let in to the corporate world because I didn't have experience in the corporate world. I had experience in the military, and I thought having the experience that I did in the military would give me an edge into the civilian life. Now, that was the 1980s, okay, early 1980s. I think right now there's a lot more patriotism going on towards veterans. Disrespect and not patriotism if you're black or you're transgender, but there is a lot more resources for veterans than there were when I left the military. So another topic that was brought up was the church. Yes, I live in the Bible Belt. Do I care that I live in the Bible Belt? No, I don't care because I never really got into the church. Although I didn't get into the church, and I see it as being extremely problematic for black people, and even more so for transgender people and the LGBTQ plus they're getting ready to lose their rights too. It's problematic. The attitudes and the mentality of people in the church being judgmental about different kinds of black people. That is so problematic. I don't even want to. I'm not one to tell anybody what to believe or disbelieve in this world. I would never invalidate somebody's spiritual experience in this world as long as they're using it for good, as long as they're using it to better humanity, as long as they're not using it to look down upon people who are not religious. I just know of too many people who when they did come out as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, whatever, when they did come out around the church, they got thrown out of the church. So I can understand those people's desire not to be anywhere near people that are religious. That's why a lot of people turn away from the church, because they have to live a double life, be in the closet and stay around the church, or come out and potentially be thrown out of the church. I have run across some very, very, very hurt people who were ministers and pastors who got thrown out of their seat at the church because they came out as one of those. So, and that's not everybody's experience. That's just a lot of people's experience. So I'm not here to invalidate their experience while validating the experience of being in the church. I don't care whether you are or not, as long as you are a good person. Good is relative, isn't it? Or is it absolute? I don't know. It's relative. What people think is and is not good, which is, if you do believe in the church and you do believe in the Bible and all that stuff, it's in black and white what good is. And I said good, not acceptable, not morally acceptable. That kind of thing is where I part ways with the Bible, is that, you know what, that thing was written by a bunch of white men to control black people during slavery. And that's another thing that young man brought up, is that he didn't experience slavery. Well, there's a lot of misinformed people that slavery doesn't exist anymore. Well, yes, it does. It just doesn't look like it did 4 centuries ago. But we're very, very much still in the middle of all that bullshit. They're hanging people down here in the South and calling them suicides, that's what they're calling it. But this is shit was going on during Jim Crow, before the Civil Rights Movement. We are still in a system of slavery. We are still being oppressed. Systematic oppression is very, very, very much alive in the United States. So in terms of what slavery really means, well, no, not the way it looked like 4 centuries ago, but it's still got a whole bunch of hooks still in us from slavery. They don't call white people don't call other white people for being in their space, do they? No. They ain't picking up the phone and calling no police because we were sitting 2 minutes in their restaurant. No. That is the kind of shit that was going on during slavery, and that was going on previous to the Civil Rights era and during the Civil Rights movements. All of that crap was going on, and it's still going on. It's just taking on a different face. It's just taking on different terminology. It's just taking on, see, they can no longer openly oppress and discriminate and all that stuff, except for, the loudmouth white folks that have gotten a lot of balls from this political climate and administration. But the silent ones are doing an oppression number without saying it out loud to you. But I've been around long enough to know that they are doing this sort of thing amongst each other. They're doing it in meetings all across this country. They're doing it in meetings, and it shows up in their behavior, not what they say overtly. It's showing up in their behavior, how they're still oppressing us. Just not the same as they did during slavery when it was open season and legal to lynch us. They're just doing it in different ways now. And the ones who are silent are deadlier than the ones that are overt. At least the ones where you know where you stand, you can see them. The ones where you that are like snakes are the ones you can't see, that are sitting up there being your buddy and smiling in your face, and then as soon as they get out of your earshot, they're agreeing with the overt racists. Really, really super dangerous. So I made a note here about passing and cisgender privilege. Like I said, when I embraced who I really am and that kind of thing, I was never thinking about this in terms of passing or not passing. I did whine a lot in the beginning because I didn't get hair fast enough on my face. But you know why I wanted that hair? It wasn't to pass. It was so I would stop being misgendered. That is the only anxiety I had about it in the beginning, was I was in a real big ass hurry to stop being called she, her, ma'am, all that stuff. I did not want to be called any of that stuff, so I was extremely anxious to, I guess you can say, pass as male. But see, that's not what I was thinking. Nor did I ever get in any groups asking, do I pass as male or not? No, I never did that. I did say, you know what, I did kind of monitor my progress with regards to the hair on my face, but that was about it. But yeah, this thing about passing, again, the conversation splintered from about being black transgender men being thrown under the bus into transition stuff, where that is a slippery ass slope right now. Oh my God, slippery and complex. And then I saw something else, which is the isolation of people who do identify as either female or male, the binary spectrum. The isolation of people who don't. The isolation of people who are non-binary, who are gender non-conforming, who are agender, who are asexual or whatever. There is they're isolated and their community isn't big. So they latch on to ours, which could look to a lot of people like we're being very protective of our territory or the ground that we've had to break by pure nature of being binary. You know, there's a lot of pioneers out there, folks, who paved the way to us being a little bit more accepted than they were. And yeah, there seems to be a lot of people taking advantage of that aren't necessarily inside of the transgender experience. In fact, there's not even a few of them. There's a lot of them. But again, like one of them said, who is and who is not the gatekeepers of all of that? Hey, I akin that to cats. And some dogs too, where we tend to be, as human beings, territorial over what we perceive to be our territory. And people who don't seem to have good intentions of being in our territory are trying to get in that territory. And yeah, folks are fighting like mad to keep certain individuals out of that territory. See, some of these people that were in that live, they haven't seen a lot of my vlogs where I talked about one experience in particular of a woman who very loved everything about being a woman. Nothing about her was transgender. Nothing, absolutely nothing. She wasn't transitioning to anything. And she was comfortable being a woman, and somebody questioned, well, why are you saying you are female to male if you love everything about being a woman? I had the same question because I saw a picture of her. Nails done, hair done, lipstick, makeup, eyebrows arched, in a dress, all this other stuff. Why would somebody like that identify as female to male? Now, I could see if there was something masculine about that individual, but there wasn't, not one thing. And that got brought up too last night, was that they're under the bus, these feminine men. So I got to thinking about that, and I was like, feminine men. And you know what it reminded me of? Feminine gay men. That's what it reminded me of. But gay men are accepted, somewhat more accepted than transgender men, be they feminine or masculine or in between. In fact, a lot of gay men have issue with transgender men. And in the patriarchy and the hierarchy of people in the United States, they have more rights than we do. So, and yeah, I'm seeing all this stuff that I had no idea it was this intense, this negative, this oppressive when I was living, when I thought that I was a lesbian. I didn't see any of this stuff. And now I'm seeing all this stuff for the very first time, and it's like blowing my mind how complex it is, how splintered it is, how divided it is, how there doesn't seem to be an answer, and the only answer I can give is the one I'm creating through TMBLM Incorporated. Is just get away from all of this. I'm a better black than you are, and I'm a better black than you are because at least I'm not that. Right? You know, all the resources going to that kind of black person, while no resources is going to that one. And up underneath that are all the non-blacks, not all the non-blacks, but millions of them, who are enjoying a life of extravagance and enjoying a life of privilege without having to deal with any of this shit that we're dealing with as black people. In fact, they don't even want to, they're not supportive. Because of privilege affords you the choice of saying, I don't have to deal with it at all. I don't have to acknowledge your pain. I don't have to acknowledge your struggle. I'm not living like that. I don't have to live like that. So I don't have to acknowledge any bit of it. And I can be as ignorant as I want. I can be as racist as I want. I can be as covertly privileged as I want, and I can be as overtly privileged as I want to. That is what privilege buys you, and fragility keeps the status quo. Saying, I don't have to open my ears, and I don't have to open my eyes, and I don't have to open my mouth about the injustices going on in the United States towards people who don't look like me. Although, interestingly enough, when it comes to the immigrants, all of a sudden a lot of them woke up. But they have never woken up when the same thing is happening to black people. We as black people find that very interesting. For 4 centuries, they haven't given one goddamn iota about what we go through. Some of us, all of our lives. But yet, the immigration issue has caused a lot of them to wake up, when our issues do not cause them to wake up at all. Boy, would I like to be a, no, I wouldn't like to be a psychologist and get up underneath that. Why brown people matter more than black people? Ask yourself that. So, did I have anything else on here? No. I just wanted to, a woman asked while that was going on about me saying that when I was young, I had to live a double life because I was straight up male. Everything about me was male growing up, but I was forced to live as both male and female. And she asked, female as in what? Well, I kind of thought that was kind of obvious, but it wasn't, I suppose. But listen, I didn't play with dolls. There wasn't anything feminine about me. I didn't like makeup. I didn't like any of that shit. I did not like anything that was feminine because I was biologically born with a woman's body, but I have never been a woman. See, this stuff goes way back for me. It goes back further than I even knew there was a difference between men and women, between boys and girls. I felt and thought like this before I even knew. And so, yeah, I was forced to look like a girl, act like a girl in public, but I could more or less get away with being a male outside of the public eye. And that's why to this day, some of my family members are like, well, but you was a girl growing up. No, I wasn't. I was just forced to look like one for the cameras. Living the life of a freaking celebrity. Yeah, because if I had, showing up around the cameras looking like a boy, ooh, what would people say? What would people think? Not that I cared when I was young, but still, that was the bubble I was inside of, was that, do your thing when you're outside of the cameras, but when you're on the cameras, you gotta look like this, and you gotta act like that, and you gotta, that kind of thing was going on when I was young, and inside I resented the hell out of it. But I didn't know how to articulate that, and I didn't know how to verbalize that. I just know how it made me feel. It made me feel like I was being somebody that I wasn't, that I was forced to be somebody I was not, because I was missing, all of the physical aspects of being male. And has that been biting me in the booty ever since I started transitioning? Yes, it has. Now, yeah, on one hand, I hate this word because it's really starting to grate on my nerves. But yeah, okay, I pass as male to people who don't know me and who didn't know me from before. But to the degree that I am able to do that, I'm also still having to deal with people who knew me from before and who are absolutely livid that I have the gall to call myself a male, to call myself a man, to try to remind them or tell them how it really was for me growing up. They don't want to fucking hear it. Some of them are literally angry at me for even having the nerve to even live my truth. So, I don't escape everything for being able to look, I don't want to say look like a man because I am a man, but looking like one or whatever, I still don't escape everything there is about that because I do have family and I'm 60 fucking years old. And some of those people have been around all these 60 years. And so they've seen it. They saw how I grew up without knowing what was going on inside of me. And now at their age and at my age, I'm having to explain to them or try to explain to them what was going on inside of me way back when. And they're not, they can't embrace it. They don't know how to come to terms with the fact that, it took me all these years to realize what was going on with me. As long as it took me to embrace it, is taking them even longer to embrace it. And some of them may never do it. But again, I don't care. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to live my truth, irregardless of what anybody says, irregardless of how much discrimination I face, irregardless of how much oppression I face, irregardless of any of that. I cannot be who I'm not. And nobody's going to be able to ever convince me that I'm not who I said I am. Any more than somebody can convince me that I'm white when I'm black. Which, by the way, for people who look mixed, look, I got white, Native American, and black in my family. So I'm mixed too. It's just a matter of how much DNA has those other races in it. But I think a lot of us are in that same category in this country. It's just some look less, some have lighter skin than others. But big deal. I still got around all that stuff and had a successful career even though I'm darker skinned. That didn't stop me. And it's not going to stop me to the degree that I can keep pushing on and that God keeps opening doors for me. I'm going to blow past all that bullshit too. That I can only I can stop me from being successful, even though there are people out there who have undermined me. Lots of people in the last 3 years. And I may talk about that someday and I may not. I don't even know if it's important. What's important is for me to stay positive, for me to stay focused, for me to keep my eye on the prize, which is liberation of black, melanated, African American, Moors, whatever you want to call it, is liberation, is freedom. I'm willing to die for that freedom. I would rather be free than to be inside of, to be quiet, to conform, and live the rest of my life in the opposite of freedom, in bondage, to one degree or another. If you are not white in this society, you are in bondage. And the freedom from that bondage happens here first before it happens anywhere else. And that's where my bus is headed. And anybody wanting to get on that bus is free to contact me, to hunt me down if they want to be on the freedom bus from oppression, from racism, from things of that nature. I'm not here to free you from your transition. My bus is to free black people. And with that, I will bid you adieu. If you celebrate the 4th of July, have fun. I think if I had a partner, I'd probably celebrate it because I like to watch the fireworks and stuff, but I haven't done that in many years. Yeah, just to go and hang out and watch all the pretty displays out there. But patriotically speaking, I don't have much of that left. But if you do celebrate it, I'm not going to invalidate your experience of enjoying the holiday, enjoying your time off if you're working in the working class. Um, and the pollinator is out.